All right, ready to dive in. Today, it's something a little different. Um, a deep dive into emotional intelligence in communication. And this is thanks to, a great piece you sent over. It's really got me thinking.
Yeah, it's one of those things, people don't always think about, right?
Yeah.
But it's super important.
Totally. Like whether you're, running a team or trying to close a deal, even just talking to family, this stuff can really make or break the whole thing. And get this, the article even mentioned like this crazy thing that even if you manage to like hide how you really feel, with your words, it'll still come out in your body language.
Oh, that's so true. We like totally underestimate how much those little signals matter. Even if you're saying all the right things.
It's like emotions have their own language or
Yeah.
something. But hold on, before we get too deep, what exactly is emotional intelligence when we're talking about communication?
So it's being able to not just understand your own emotions, but manage them too. And then on top of that, you got to be able to recognize and even kind of influence how other people are feeling. So when you think about communication, it's all about how our feelings shape what we say and how we say it,
Hmm.
while also being tuned into how everyone else is feeling.
So it's not just about like putting on a happy face. It's more like you're using emotions in a smart way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You use that awareness to build, better relationships, communicate more clearly, and handle tough situations with a little more grace. Like the article said, this can really help with how you get along with colleagues, bosses, even customers.
That makes sense. I can already see how this could help me avoid putting my foot in my mouth, which I do sometimes.
Oh, yeah. And if you can like read other people's emotions, you can adjust how you talk to them and actually connect better. Say a coworker's obviously upset. Instead of just like jumping in with your own stuff, you can recognize they're not doing great and change your approach.
Oh, yeah. I remember that story in the article about the employee who messed up that purchase order. What did you think about that?
It was the perfect example of how not having emotional intelligence can cause all these misunderstandings and really hurt relationships. Even though the manager didn't like yell or anything, their passive aggressiveness was basically saying, I don't trust you.
That's a good point. We think we're being subtle, but actions speak louder than words, right?
Right. Now, to really get into this, let's look at Daniel Goleman's framework for emotional intelligence. It helps break this big idea down into smaller
Oh,
pieces.
yeah, Goldman. I've heard the name, but honestly, I haven't really looked into it much. In your mind, like, what are the main parts again?
He talks about a bunch, but for today's deep dive, we'll stick to the ones that matter most for communication. So, self awareness, self management, social awareness, and relationship management.
Got it. Okay, let's start with self-awareness. I feel like I'm pretty good at that, but, I'm always down to learn more.
For sure. We tend to think of self aware people as, just knowing how they feel. But the really cool thing is that this awareness can inspire others. When someone's genuine and owns up to their mistakes, it's really powerful.
Yeah, because it makes them seem more human and relatable,
Right.
not like some kind of perfect robot.
Right. Being vulnerable can actually be a strength, especially if you're a leader. It builds trust and helps people connect. But here's the thing, self awareness isn't something we're all born with. A lot of people actually struggle with it.
Oh, tell me about it. I've definitely had moments where I was totally clueless about how my mood was affecting everyone else. So how can we get better at this self-awareness thing?
The article had some great tips. First, there's mindfulness, paying attention to your thoughts and feelings right now without judging them.
So like being aware of that little voice in your head that's always talking.
Yeah. Another one is reflection, really thinking about what you've experienced and how it made you feel. Writing it down can help too.
That makes sense. It can help you see patterns in how you act.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I always get cranky when I'm hungry or something.
Exactly. And believe it or not, the article even said exercise can help boost self awareness.
Exercise.
Yeah.
Seriously. That's a weird connection. I never would have thought of that.
It's pretty cool. When you push your body, you become really aware of how your body and mind are reacting. And that awareness can then like spill over into other parts of your life so you're more sensitive to your emotions in general.
Okay, that's fascinating. So it seems like self-awareness is the foundation for everything else in emotional intelligence, at least when it comes to communication. Would you agree?
100%. It's the base. Without knowing your own emotions, you can't really manage them or understand other people's.
Okay, so let's move on to self-management. How does that fit into all of this communication stuff?
Self management is all about controlling your impulses and managing your emotions in a healthy way. This is where the science gets really interesting. Our emotional center, the limbic system, is actually way more powerful than the rational part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex.
So it's like our heart and our head are always fighting.
Pretty much. And when we're stressed or feeling really strong emotions, the limbic system kind of takes over, which can make us say or do things we wish we hadn't.
Ugh. Yeah, I've been there. Like agreeing to help with the project when I'm already swamped just because I got caught up in the moment.
We've all done it. Or, snapping at someone you care about when you're stressed, even though they didn't do anything wrong.
It's like our rational brain takes a vacation. So how
Mhm.
can we get better at managing ourselves, especially in those heated moments?
Well, the article really stressed something that sounds simple, but it's surprisingly effective. Slow down and think before you speak.
Easier said than done, right? Especially when things are getting intense.
Totally. But that's where things like deep breathing come in. By calming your body down, you give your prefrontal cortex a chance to catch up and make smarter decisions.
This makes me wonder, how do we actually learn to pause before reacting, especially when the stakes are high?
It takes practice, and it's a constant process. One thing you can do is figure out what your emotional triggers are, like what specific situations or people really push your buttons. Once you know what sets you off, you can start coming up with ways to deal with it.
Okay, that's good advice. We've covered self-awareness and self-management now. What about social awareness and relationship management? It feels like those two are kind of connected.
You're right on the money. They are, especially when we're talking about communication.
So break it down for us. What are these two really all about?
Basically, it's about understanding and empathizing with other people's perspectives and needs. It's stepping outside of your own head and seeing the world through their eyes.
Empathy in a nutshell.
Exactly. And empathy is super important for avoiding stereotypes, understanding why people react the way they do, and building real connections.
The article mentioned that story about the coworker who was upset and how misreading their emotions could lead to a misunderstanding.
Right, and it shows how important it is to really listen and pay attention to both what people say and how they act. Sometimes what someone doesn't say is just as important as what they do.
So how can we become more socially aware and better at managing relationships?
Asking questions that show empathy is really powerful. The article gave some great examples, like, can you say more about that? I'm curious about that. How do you feel about that?
I love those. They show you're really interested and encourage the other person to open up.
Exactly. It's about making a space where people feel safe to communicate openly and honestly.
So if we think about the bigger picture, being socially aware can help us navigate all those complicated social situations and build trust, which is like the key to good communication.
You got it. It's like a secret weapon for communicating better.
I'm starting to see how this is way more than just being nice. It's a skill that can really help you succeed.
Absolutely. The real power of emotional intelligence comes when you actually use it. It's not just about knowing the ideas, it's about putting them into practice to improve how we interact with each other.
I'm already thinking about how I can use this in my own life. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what are some key takeaways you think our listeners should remember?
One last thought-provoking question. How could understanding your own emotional triggers help you anticipate and deal with potential conflicts in communication? That's something to really think about.
Ooh, that's a good one to ponder.
Oh.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back to dig even deeper into this fascinating topic. Okay, we're back and ready to keep going with this idea of emotional intelligence in communication. I'm especially interested in like how this works when you're a leader. I mean, good leaders need to know how to understand and motivate their team.
You got it. The article made a big point about how crucial emotional intelligence is for being a good leader. It can really boost how people see you and inspire them.
So it's not just about telling people what to do and expecting them to follow. You need a deeper connection with them.
Totally. Being a good leader means knowing what your team needs and what motivates them, and then making sure they have a positive and supportive environment. It's about connecting with people on an emotional level.
I'm starting to see how emotional intelligence can totally change how we talk to people, both at work and in our personal lives. It's like this whole other side of communication that I never really thought about.
And the cool thing is, emotional intelligence isn't something you're stuck with. You can actually develop it and get better over time.
So it's not like you're born with it or you're not.
Yeah.
That's good to know. What are some ways we can actually start working on those emotional intelligence skills?
We've already talked about a few: mindfulness, reflection, journaling, even exercise. But there are other things we can add to our toolbox. One really good way is to just pay more attention to how we're feeling throughout the day.
So like keeping a mental note of how you feel in different situations, almost like an emotional checklist.
Exactly. When you start to see those patterns in your emotions, you can figure out what triggers you and find better ways to handle those situations.
Makes sense. Like if you know that being stuck in traffic always makes you grumpy,
Yeah.
you can be ready for that feeling and choose to do something different.
You got it. You could listen to some relaxing music, do some deep breathing, or even try to think about the situation in a new way. It's all about being in control instead of letting your emotions control you.
I like that. It reminds me of something else the article talked about, looking for opportunities to practice empathy. How can we actually do that?
One of the easiest and best ways is to try to see things from the other person's perspective.
Like putting yourself in their shoes.
Exactly. Try to imagine being in their situation and really think about their thoughts and feelings. What might they be dealing with? What might be motivating them?
It's a good reminder. It's easy to get caught up in our own lives and forget to think about other people's point of view.
It's human nature, but if we try, we can train ourselves to be more empathetic and understanding.
I'm seeing a pattern here, awareness practice, and being willing to step outside of our comfort zone.
You nailed it. Emotional intelligence is a journey, not a destination.
Just like anything else you want to get better at, right? It
But-
takes work and dedication.
For sure, but
Yeah.
it's worth it. Imagine how much easier things would be if we all tried to understand each other's emotions better.
I'm convinced. This has been so insightful. So for our listener, what would you say are the most important things we've learned so far from this deep dive?
I think the main message is that emotional intelligence isn't just a nice to have, it's a must have for good communication. And if we work on our self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management skills, we can really change how we interact with people and be more successful in all parts of our lives.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. Okay, before we wrap up this episode, I have one more question. The article focused mostly on emotional intelligence at work. How does all of this apply to our personal relationships?
That's a great question. And the answer is it's just as important, maybe even more so in our personal lives. Strong relationships are built on trust, empathy, and open communication.
So all those things we talked about, active listening, asking empathetic questions, managing our own emotions, those are all crucial for healthy relationships too.
Absolutely. I'd even say that developing emotional intelligence is even more important in our personal lives because emotions are often stronger and things can feel more serious.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Being able to handle conflicts in a healthy way and tell people what we need could make a huge difference in our relationships with the people we care about. It's about creating a space where everyone feels heard, understood, and respected.
Exactly. And that brings us to one final thought-provoking idea I want to leave our listener with.
Okay, I'm hooked. What's this final thought?
It's something we don't always think about, the power of silence in communication. Like when things are really heated, sometimes the smartest thing you can do is just stop, take a breath, and let yourself process everything before you say anything.
So true. We've been talking about all these active strategies, but sometimes the best response is to actually hold back.
Exactly. Remember, emotional intelligence is about responding, not just reacting. And sometimes that little pause can make all the difference. It keeps us from saying something we'll regret and gives us time to really see things from the other person's side.
I'm amazed by how this deep dive has changed how I think about communication.
Yeah.
It's not just about the words, it's this whole dance of emotions and self-awareness.
And the best part is it's a skill you can always keep working on and improving. The more you practice, the better you get at handling those tricky relationships.
I feel like I've learned so much from this conversation. Anything else you want to highlight before we finish up?
Just remember that becoming more emotionally intelligent starts with one small step. Take what we've talked about today and try using it in your own life. You might be surprised how many positive changes it makes.
That's really inspiring. It's like we've got this toolbox now and we can use it to build stronger connections and communicate better.
Exactly. And don't forget, it's a journey. You're always learning and growing. Don't be scared to try things out, make mistakes, and keep getting better.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
My pleasure. Remember, you have the power to change how you communicate and how you connect with people. Embrace the journey of becoming more emotionally intelligent.
That's a great way to end things. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into emotional intelligence and communication. Until next time.